you can't see me.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So there's always technical problems, but thank goodness you can join us in audio. So take it away.
Can you just,
yes,
Mike, can you do me a favor and check in your chat or something that people can hear me okay and that there's not a problem with that?
Can everyone let me know if you can hear Dr. Cohan?
Or I guess if you can't hear me.
Yes, I'm getting lots of thumbs up and
oh, great.
Yeah, everyone can hear you.
Okay. Wow. Well, this is an interesting one. I've never called into a Zoom meeting before. I've always done it with my camera on, and I'm kind of a big believer in cameras on, actually. So I'm so sorry that this did not work technologically. Mike has been unbelievably diligent and gracious, and we have spent a lot of time on the phone together and lots of emails. So I can't believe that this is what this is what happened, but that's okay. In a way, it's sort of a metaphor for some of the things that we'll be talking about today, and certainly for my own kind of lessons in life and my own mantra of, just the art of letting go. So this is going to be that. But it's truly a pleasure to be part of this and to have been invited. It is such a small world. So Mike reached out to me a few months ago to participate, and I was just delighted by the invitation, and I recognized immediately your college. So one of my old friends is there, and I think she's probably on this, although we can't see each other, and we haven't seen each other in years and years, but Lara Descartes and I taught at the University of Connecticut Stores before she came to Brescia and before I left Massachusetts to move to South Carolina. So one of the treats for me today was going to be to see her on screen, and I am sending Lara a hug and outstretched arms to all of you, hoping that this was a productive experience, even with the limitations.
She's on the line.
So even though,
hi, Deb.
Oh, cool. Hi. We'll talk. Wow. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I really ultimately, I wish that we were in person doing this, because the kind of workshops and things I'm used to leading are they're intimate, they're up close and personal. So there would have been the limitation anyway in a certain way, but so this is kind of more one step removed, but we'll do our best. And I do want you to know that you should count me as a resource, for the future as you think about these issues, and that you individually, feel free to contact me after this session anytime, by email, phone, whatever, and you can get my contact information directly from Mike, or he can type it into the chat, whatever works. I'm really open to dialogue. So even though I'm going to do some talking, I'm going to certainly keep opening it up for some questions and comments along the way, and then we'll have some dedicated time at the end for Q&A also. I'm going to do a little bit of stuff that's kind of very atypical for some kind of, faculty staff meeting situation, but we'll do a little bit of meditative activity as well, and, some sharing if people feel comfortable doing so. So just everything sort of, for you, and to hope that it helps you both today and beyond. But since, issues of pedagogy and also reshaping online pedagogy, and also issues of diversity and inclusion are really important to everything that I do, I'm so struck by the rest of your activities for the rest of today that's been created for you. So I think that this is a great time to kind of kick off for that, because some of what we'll be talking about with caring for ourselves relates more broadly to issues of social justice. It relates to how we relate with our students, that sort of thing. Okay, so I want to, just kind of give you a little bit of a sense of how I got into this, and how this started to be important to me. So even I can even trace a lot of this back to being a kid. Even as a kid, I really valued solitude. I valued time in nature. I valued creativity, and that was a lot of how I was raised. And then, life happens, and then we get sort of pulled away sometimes from our deepest core self. And like the poet Rumi says, we have to think about how to make regular visits with ourselves. And I come back to that a lot, to like, how do I make an appointment with myself? How do I make a regular visit, with myself, and make that a priority? It's so interesting. Life is so full circle. When I met Lara, I'm going to fast forward to that. She was a tenure track assistant professor, and I was an assistant professor in residence, still in graduate school. And I was living in Massachusetts, commuting to Connecticut, spending an hour and 45 minutes each way in the car. I was trying to finish my dissertation. I was teaching a full load at the University of Connecticut. I was in the process of also getting married to my now ex-husband and friend. And my dad was starting to get sick, in real decline, which is part of what my book is about. And we were also trying to sell a condo of my ex-husband's and buy a house and totally gut it and renovate it and everything else. So many different things were happening for me personally and professionally then. And I was so busy, and I was moving through this like tyranny of to-do lists. And all the while, having grown up feeling like I needed to be perfect, as so many women do, I think, and people in general, I was just, I felt sort of constantly kind of like worried and frantic and just like rushing around. And I knew that I needed to, get to a deeper place, and that I needed to kind of re-anchor back to those things that truly mattered at my core, creativity, depth, nature, a larger connection to the world, a larger, sense of purpose and shape and meaning to life. Around that time, I was actually starting to work with a therapist who created this thing called the Deep River. And she wrote a book about it, Abby Statius, and the book is called The Deep River Within, Finding the Deep River Within. And it's a guide to kind of finding balance and meaning in everyday life. And I worked with her in these groups as well. There were circles of women kind of facing many of the same issues. And beneath the exterior of our lives, there was a lot of real interior similarity. But she described the Deep River and coming to the Deep River as something that has just always resonated with me and informs this session and the work that I do. So she really conceptualizes the Deep River as this sort of way of accessing our deeper flow and going beneath the sort of superficial busyness of our lives, going beneath the tyranny of the to-do list, and really, accessing our still small voice, our greater connection to ourselves and to the world. And as time has unfolded, because, at this point, or at that point I was, in my 20s and 30s when all this was happening, and now I'm 51, I still carry along many of these kinds of lessons with me, and they seem to inform my teaching. They've informed my writing, and these sorts of sessions that I offer at various colleges and universities. So I think what I want to do is, first of all, I would love, and this would have been a lot easier to do if I could see you too, but maybe Mike can be my translator. I would love to hear what prompted you to decide to come to this session and what you hope to get out of it. I know that we can't go around and hear from every single person. And if we had the whole day or like a retreat type of a session, I would want to know that. But if we can just get, you know, a handful or so of people to maybe share and like pop up with what it is, if you want to type it into the chat and he can read it, or if you want to unmute yourself and say it so I can hear it, that would be great too. But I'd love to know a little bit about what brings you to this. I know one person, I think her name is Anne, sent a message to Mike the other day saying that she was looking for more of a sense of how to deal with the blurry boundaries, I guess you could say. I'm using that expression, but between work and home, and how to sort of deal with all the work we're doing out of our homes. So Anne, if you're there, that was a great question. But I'd love to hear from some others.
So if you have a question, just because because Deb's on the phone, if you can just say your name and then ask your question. And thank you, Anne Bigelow, for sending that, being brave enough to respond to the questions.
And the other two, together with unmuting and asking the question, if you'd rather send it in a chat,
Yep.
Send it in a chat. And if you'd like to send it anonymously, send it in a chat to me or Mike, and we can just read it from the chat and don't necessarily need to identify who the question's coming from if that makes you feel more comfortable.
I see Valerie has her hand up. So go ahead, Valerie.
Yes, I had a comment. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Yeah.
I can hear you perfectly.
Yeah. So I've been teaching French for a number of years, and I've taught online courses in the past, but just on a part-time basis. And this year, I really experienced a sense of guilt. I was behind with all my work. I was dealing with accommodation requests all the time. Because I was behind, because I mark papers on paper, assignments on paper, I didn't have time to scan them and return them to students sometimes. Sometimes I did, but sometimes I couldn't. So it's been a tough year, and what I'm looking for is a bit of inspiration. Because and I'm sure it's been a difficult year for a lot of professors, so and students alike. But it's just been a heavy load.
Yes. Thank you for that. That's really that's helpful that you shared that. That's really important. The guilt. Okay. And just constantly feeling behind, feeling like you're sort of can't catch up, the sort of running breathless. Okay. Anybody else?
Cheryl has her hand up. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Hi. Thank you very much for this opportunity. So I'm interim principal here at Brescia, and I think all of us in our roles this year have faced that conflict, I think, between our own feelings of stress and uncertainty, but then trying to help others through it and be brave and strong for people, whether it's me for Brescia or for our families or for our students. And so how do you find that balance? Is that question humbly asked.
I couldn't hear the end of that. How do you find that balance between being strong for others and
and
taking care of yourself, was it?
and just asking that humbly, because I know, we all have our own vulnerabilities as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's an important one. Yeah, it's really, I mean, it's different. I mean, that's why I really applaud you as a school doing something like this, because it is, it's hard to share in front of our colleagues and in front of people maybe who we report to, the ways in which we don't feel like we're good enough, or the ways that we feel we've come up short. And that seems to be something that's pressing on all of us all the time, but certainly even more so in this historical moment. Anyone else?
I had a question, but kind of wanted your feedback. Deb, it's Mike. Yes,
I know your
you
voice.
recognize the voice. But one of the
Totally,
things,
you're my new phone pal.
Exactly, phone buddies. Is that one of the things, particularly in this period, in terms of like self-care, is especially now, is that you have this sense of never really being disconnected. You're always kind of connected to colleagues, and for the faculty, to students, and it's like like what you've been talking about and you've written about, where days just kind of bleed together, and it's like you're working on the weekend, you're working at night, you're and even if you're not working, is that you're available, you're ready to answer the question, take care of something, stuff like that. And so, how do you disconnect, reasonably, without, as Valerie was talking about, without that guilt, right? Because that's something that I keep thinking about.
Yeah. No, this is really good. I bet you're, Valerie and Cheryl, Mike, it seems like you probably articulated a lot of people's concerns and questions. That's sort of how to disconnect, and to maybe do it before you're thoroughly tapped out, so that it's not just doing it when you're sick, or where it's just, the end of your rope, but when it's as a way to sort of keep coming back to yourself. So those are good comments. Anything else in the chat that I need to hear about?
There's nothing in the chat right now. So
I just had another question.
Oh, Leanne.
Hi, it's Leanne Ford, registered social worker and student wellness educator at Brescia. Thanks so much for this opportunity. I'm really happy to be here today. I just had a question, I guess, along with everyone else, along, I think, the similar theme, really looking for some practical strategies or tools to implement. I often refer to them as like rituals or like rhythms, along the lines of just sort of obviously working in this different way and working from home over the last year and a bit. Home used to be the sort of this, and it still is, this sacred place where you would kind of like disconnect from work, and you leave work at work and then you go home. But now obviously working from home virtually, work is just sort of in the space. So I'm just wondering if you have any other ideas on really practical strategies or ideas on how to, I guess, implement some of those boundaries with kind of like leaving work at work at the end of the day. In your own home, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense. I think that was part of Anne's question also. So yeah, that's good. Yeah, well, I hope, that in some way, shape, or form, we address virtually all of this in what I'll be doing. And so this is really helpful to kind of, it's also validating that the things I was thinking about doing are things that hopefully will resonate. And then certainly if you have other questions, you can contact me privately for sure. I know that when Mike and I were planning this session, the emphasis was a little bit less on like tips and tricks, so to speak, and a little bit more on kind of a way of thinking and a kind of sensibility that might lead you to the tips and tricks. But I know that I'll probably fold in some of those like strategies and pieces of advice as we go. And I'm certainly happy to share more, you know, at the end as well too. So that's really good. Okay, so I think what I want to do is something really kind of different and radical, which is to, and you can certainly turn off your camera if you're on camera, if you feel weird about doing this on camera. But I'm going to invite you to do a short, very short, it's just going to be like a minute or two kind of thing, meditation with me. And I'm just going to lead you in it just as a way to sort of get us grounded and going, and sort of hooked into some of these ideas that have been raised already. So, you know, we're just going to start wherever we are. So, you know, you can close your eyes if you feel comfortable. You can certainly move to a different spot in the room, or, you know, find a place that's comfy. The idea being that wherever you are, it's probably a good idea to try to sit upright and have your back strong and your front, your chest kind of open, which is symbolic in terms of just kind of having an open heart to this. So I'm just going to lead you with a few thoughts, and then and you know, then we'll open it after that. So if you're really new to meditation, it might seem like one more thing to have to perfect or to do in a certain way. There's really nothing you need to do. It's just, this is just a moment or two where there's no shoulds, there's no coulds, there's no anything. There's just breathing. And we're going to follow what Ram Dass, who was a fabulous Buddhist teacher, would say. He'd say, be here now. We don't need to worry about what happened before this, all the sort of shenanigans to get here. We won't worry about what we're doing in a few hours. We'll just be here now with ourselves and with each other. It's our visit with ourselves. So one way to get anchored into your own breath is to really just, even with a couple of breaths, just you can even put your hand on your abdomen, and you can feel what happens when you're breathing. When you're inhaling, your belly expands a bit. And when you exhale and let it go, it contracts a bit. As long as we're alive, you really don't need to do anything. Your breath will breathe you. No one's breathing any better than anyone else here. think of this as like you're taking a little trip to the land of self-worthiness, where you don't have to feel guilt and you can just give yourself this time. If it helps, you can label the breath as in and out, if that sort of helps you get into it so that your mind isn't spinning with things that you feel like you need to worry about. It's perfectly normal if you feel weird about this, or if you feel like you might not be doing something right, or if your mind wanders. That's what the mind does. And when you do feel your mind wandering off, think about how you can be gentle and firm. How can you just realize that that's what the mind does? So with gentleness and also with firmness, bringing yourself back to just this moment and kind of parking the other stuff elsewhere. Just as you might working at home. And in the last minute or so of this, what we'll do is I want to ask you to think of a quality of presence that you hope for. Maybe it's that you would like more balance, or maybe it's that you want more stillness, or maybe it's that you want joy. You want to cultivate a sense of more joy in your life. Who knows what it might be, but just name for yourself a word, a quality of being, a quality of presence that you hope for, that you wish for, that you know you want more of in your life. And think of what that looks like to you in your mind. And if your mind is wandering off, you can think about your thoughts being almost like clouds that are just, they're going to just keep passing by. You might be doing something and it just sort of, another thought goes by. Or perhaps an image I like to think about is sitting on a front porch in the summer with a glass of iced tea or something, and I'm just sitting there and looking at trees and flowers and the sun and a hammock and all that kind of stuff. But then suddenly it's jarring because maybe cars start going by, and one car after another, and they start to look interesting. They look bright. They look flashy. And suddenly I start looking and diverting my attention to the cars rather than to what I was doing before. which was just paying attention to nature and just being rather than doing anything. So I like to think about thoughts being like cars passing by as we sit on the front porch in the summer. You don't really need to jump into everybody's car. You don't need to jump into every single thought. You can just sort of watch it float by as you stay in your quality of presence. And when it feels comfortable to you, you can open your eyes and kind of feel your physical self back in this moment. And I wish I could see you because that would be wonderful. But we'll take a couple breaths, and I would love to see if anybody wants to first, before I kind of move on with some stuff, if anybody wants to share what that was like, or if something came up for you that was surprising, or if you're willing to share your quality of presence and that sort of intention, that would be great. It's up to you. This is really your time. So feel free to unmute yourself if you are inclined to share something.
So it's Catherine Ann. And I'd like to share the importance of the whole, of interconnectedness, of the gifts and strengths of our community and how we're woven together as we are in our independent selves and homes, but a strong, strong sense of interconnectedness and of how we will be used as a community.
Mm-hmm. Did that, and that sort of came to you through the meditation too?
Yes, it did. Very strongly.
Wow. That's amazing. I think there actually is a lot of beauty and kind of some magic in doing it together. Like certainly I'll meditate on my own, but I find sometimes that doing this in community with other people, also with some other kinds of common goals and things and tasks, it is helpful to sort of also then realize our interconnectedness. Good. Anybody else?
Hi, it's Ed Bell. I just thought I'd mention that it felt good. It felt peaceful and relaxing, and that's a big thing.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I mean, that's what I said to Mike a few weeks ago on the phone, was just that, like, at the end of a year like this and a really busy school year and everything that people have been through and loss and grief and all sorts of things, it's like, yeah, if this time together is just, if it's only relaxing, if it just helps you sort of gather some energy, then I think it's an accomplishment. Yeah, definitely. But it's just a chance to feel good for a few minutes. So then the task becomes sort of, how do we install that as a resource in our lives, going forward? How would we feel that sort of sense of it's pleasant, or it's meaningful, or it's nourishing to ourselves more than just in this kind of dedicated moment? Other reactions, maybe it was hard, maybe it was not positive. I mean, I don't know what it was for each of you, but any other sorts of reactions?
Oh, I have a reaction to it. I'm Steve Kleinicht. I'm a sociology professor at Brescia.
Oh, cool.
My reaction, each time I try to meditate, I always, and I know this is part of the point of meditation, to just let the ideas kind of come in and let them go. I always struggle because I can feel my face relaxing and my body relaxing, and I start to kind of get in the now, and then all of a sudden this idea encroaches on the now, and I let it go, and then the next idea encroaches on it, and I find it feels good, but it feels like it takes me about 10 minutes maybe before I can kind of feel that sense of relaxation I would really like to get to. So I was thinking about how I submitted my last set of grades yesterday for the term, and you know, how many emails will I get from students today when they start looking at their marks? And I let that go, and then I'm thinking about a conference I'm currently trying to plan for the end of June, and then no, just let that go, Steve, be in the now. And anyway, so that's my struggles with meditation. I'll continue to work on it.
But that's such a great and very practical example for this kind of a group, is that rather than just rest in that moment of, I finished my grades, I submitted them, I did this, which is probably something you were like hopped up on needing to do a week ago, and you couldn't wait to finish them and have that moment. It's like, as soon as that moment happens, then the mind is conditioned to worry about the next thing. So the next thing is, how soon am I going to get challenges about grades, you know, grade complaints, grade grubbing? It's like, and that's just, it's interesting that that takes away from what you did do, which is you got it done, you know, and maybe how to respond to them in a way that just not too tight, not too loose, but just sort of like, you know, I'm sorry that you're disappointed with the grade that you've earned, and I would have loved to seen you do better also, and, you know, best wishes for the next semester. I mean, it's like the grades have already been submitted, you know, having some clear boundaries so that it's like not everything's up for sort of negotiation with that, I guess. And so, you know what I mean, like that it's just so easy to go to that place of the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and then, or, you know, like a conference or anything like that. But it's that anticipatory, like, I'm going to have to deal with this now, even though I just did this, now I'm going to have to deal with this. You know, and it's part of, I think part of it is the problem of academia, because we're really not encouraged in this career to be in the present. It's like everything pulls us out of the present. The clearest example of that is planning curriculum for semesters in advance, you know, having schedules and advising that's for like next year. It's really not about now. It's about like, what are they taking in the fall? What are they taking next spring? Or what is the 3-year course rotation for this? Or, you know, there's just this, you know, what do I need to get tenure? What do I need to do next to get promotion? What do I need for the next promotion? You know, it's sort of, there's this constant like postponing of the present and postponing joy that seems to come with this career. And it, many of us would remember that from graduate school too, the sense of like, you know, everything has to go through committees and more committees, and there's just the constant sense of not being good enough, not always being behind, feeling guilty, feeling vulnerable, feeling judged, you know, and kind of, you know, like nothing we do is good enough. There's always going to be this scrutiny. I mean, if it's dissertation committees, if it's revise and resubmit, if it's with journals, you know, if it's tenure decisions, if it's, you know, external reviewers. I mean, it's just so many layers of judgment and future and postponing. And so like even publishing a book, you know, it's like, oh, well, what's your next book about? You know, it's like, what's your next project? You know, it's often like the actual act of whatever you've accomplished becomes like not enough either, because then that's also like almost anticlimactic, and you know, you feel like, well, I have to reserve my indulging in pleasure till later. I mean, it's just, it seems like this is just endemic to the academy. You know, it's just, this is, it, you know, that's really like part of its problem. And at the same time, what's so interesting is that, you know, colleges and universities are supposed to be places where we pause and reflect. It's where we are literally teaching our students to pause and reflect and, you know, think about how to live a healthier, better, richer, more meaningful life. We're trying to create spaces for them in our classrooms to think and to reflect, to follow threads for intriguing ideas and projects. But somehow we're constantly depriving ourselves of that, or institutions are contributing to depleting us of that. You know, I have a colleague who always jokes towards the end of the semester, you know, like that he barely has time to floss his teeth. I mean, and it's just like, how long does it take to floss our teeth? Not very long, but yet it's like, that just is one more thing to fall off the care for myself list, you know, because everything else is just feeling so like just one more thing. Other feedback on any of this, or maybe echoing what anyone else has said?
Anne has her hand up.
Yes,
okay.
To get back to what Steve said, to follow up on that, I'm a strong proponent. I teach psychology at Brescia, and I teach a course called Mental Health and Physical Activity. And I'm a strong proponent for people engaging in physical activity. And the one thing that I find is that if you're doing something which engages the mind and it requires attention, that's actually very helpful. It can be a form of, excuse me, a form of meditation, in that one cannot then focus on the thing that's worrying. And I practice karate, and you can see from my picture there, I ride. And if I'm in karate or I'm trying to practice certain maneuvers with the horse, initially I might be worrying about what's happening and that thing that went on at work today or something. But after that first 5 or 10 minutes, one has to concentrate on what one's doing. So it works for certain things. For amateur runners, apparently people going out for a jog can often engage in ruminative thinking. So something like that, like karate, where you have to do the move right, you have to engage with what you're doing. That I find is very helpful, because I'm getting the physical activity, which can burn off some of the stress energy, and also my mind is put somewhere completely different. So I think if people can do that kind of thing, that's very helpful for dealing with worries and stress.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So just the sort of meditative focus on something, and sometimes the integration with the body is what you're saying?
Yes, and actually with karate, these sets of moves that one has to memorize for what are called kata, it's actually been referred to as non-stationary meditation. That instead of moving, but in a way, a kind of meditating at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else?
John has his hand up. I think he's next, and then Monica.
Great.
So this is something actually that was sent to me in a chat from someone else that's here, and just sort of to share the comment. I wonder if there are some different ways to think about things. That faculty and a number of staff have always worked from home. Some of that is related to the notion of call or vocation, the lifelong learning and the pursuit of it. what are some of the things perhaps we can share with one another that will help us to have a sense of boundary while responding to that deeper sense of who we're called to be?
That's a great question. That's a really great question. Okay, and that's your question, or that's someone's question that you're reading?
That was someone's question that I was reading. That was sent to me in the chat. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thank you to whomever also sent that. Did you also have another question on that?
No, I just wanted to share that message.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So kind of reconciling the issue of like calling and the issue of, and that sort of like, well, this is our passion. This is what we've been called to do in our lives as sort of a form of service or whatever, but then also needing boundaries.
And I think too that they, because of, that sense of call or vocation, that what we do, I think for many of us, is very much how we define ourselves. And I think that makes making those boundaries even more difficult. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's very true, because it's what we also love. I mean, but then it's like, can that become too much? It's like, I love to write, but does it serve me well to do that, staying up half the night, or doing it at the expense of like moving my body and going exercising, or not eating up maybe a proper dinner and just kind of eating to get something in me so that I can keep writing. I mean, yeah, those are really, it's interesting. It's a really good question. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not exactly sure the answer to it really, because I think it is much easier to think, well, I can be more loose with the boundaries because this is also work that I love or feel called to do. It might actually be, though, more of a reason to have the boundaries so that we don't really burn ourselves out. Thoughts on that? I wonder if other people have things to contribute to that. Because it's a really interesting question. It's almost like, and even in hearing other people talking, it seems like there are some who may want just, how do I make the boundary in the first place? I'm like, they're not worrying. Maybe some people here aren't worrying about the calling boundary question as much as just, I just want to make the darn boundary. So there's both. There's really kind of like both to speak to with that. I'm wondering what would be more helpful, since I can't see you. I'm wondering, would you like more examples of setting the boundaries, or would you like more discussion of this calling and boundary piece? Mike, can you get a sense of what?
Sure. Actually, there is that Monica still has her hand up and had a question or a comment.
Okay, sure. Then let's hear from her.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to respond to Anne's comment because it really resonated with me about the karate and the riding, because I've been a lifelong practitioner of yoga, and probably a lot of you already know. A lot of you already know that hatha yoga, the postures, is just the way we define yoga in the West, but yoga is actually a system of meditation, and a lot of the different branches of yoga don't have any postures at all. You're just sitting there doing different breathing exercises, but they all require concentration. So I really resonated with what Anne said, that if there's anything, like it could be as simple as knitting or anything that requires attention but that gets you into a zone, can be meditation. Even even walking and running can be if you're actually focused on it, if you're actually focused on each step and not on all the many thoughts that race through your head. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But also on the subject of boundaries, I think everybody in this room has probably had this struggle. John is quite right that boundaries are very difficult when it's work that you love and work that there's always more that can be done and should be done and ought to be done, which is the other aspect of boundaries in academia, because there's too many such things. So my solution personally, it might not work for other people, has been scheduling. So the meditation or the yoga or the exercise, and usually there's only time for one, if that. Interestingly, I restarted meditation last night because of having finished got something done for a deadline. But you should be doing it while you're preparing the deadline, right? That's when you need it the most. But it's always when the deadline's passed that you find the time for it. But in any case, scheduling it in like that time, 7:30 every morning, no matter what, that's the only thing that works for me. If it's not on a schedule, the time will get eaten up with work.
Yeah, that's a good point. However, if you had that as an appointment with someone else or to be somewhere, you'd probably be there.
Well, no, I wouldn't. No, if it's 7:30 in the morning, then, you pick a time. Well, right. You pick a time, or in the evening, if you pick a time when nobody, right. And then the house can burn down. I don't care. I'm gonna make that appointment with myself. But that, as I say, might not work for everyone. Some people, it's just, I'm gonna do it sometime today when I get a chance, and that's fine too. But for me, it has to be in the planner, and it has to happen at the same time, or it'll just disappear.
Yeah, like a real commitment to yourself. Yeah. I mean, that's really the thing about this, and I think that's the other piece that relates also to the calling part, is that, when we start to think of the issue of self-care, and I don't know, I almost feel like we need a better word because that's gotten so almost like commodified, commercialized. It's like an industry now. But the idea of it though is radical. It's because it's like there's really something quite radical to say, I'm going to go inward in a culture that is constantly pulling us in so many different directions. And especially, I know that there are a number of men on this session, so that's good. I also, though, as a woman, can speak to the fact that, the socialization for girls and for women is one of constantly worrying so much about other people and focusing so much energy and care on others, on building relationships, sustaining relationships, and doing all sorts of things to sort of do other care, and self-care becomes secondary. And so that's another reason why I don't even think of self-care as just a radical act. I mean, to me, it's actually a radical feminist act, where we're really trying to put some focus on not just doing for everyone else and everything else, but also kind of where do we fit into the world. So it's kind of both. Okay, were there other questions after John and Monica?
No.
Mike, was there?
There's no hands up, nothing in the chat right
now.
Oh.
Hello, this is Sarah.
Yes.
I'm on the phone, so you can't see me. I wanted to sort of connect a little bit with what Anne and Monica said. I used to be a marathon runner, and I can't do that right now because I've had a concussion. But to explain what the freedom of running was about, I wasn't very good. I was very slow. I got good value out of the registration all the time. But I found that it gave me permission. Once I went out there, I could just clear my head. Sometimes it would be things that I didn't even know what I was thinking about. I wasn't looking where I was going. I do have to look where I'm going now because I might trip. But I could just run almost with my eyes closed. And sometimes I would come back home, you know, I was sort of full of whatever it was I was doing, but I'd come in, I'd have a shower, and then it was all peace, and I sort of understood the piece that was missing. So that's something that I found very important in my life. I don't have it right now, so I'm trying to search for that. So as something as a replacement. And I used to, before that, I used to be a long distance swimmer, and I had another concussion, so I couldn't swim anymore. But I used to just swim with my eyes closed. And that was a form of, because of the swimming, the breathing. And I think, you know, that's the common thread here with Monica, and also probably with Anne and the concentration. But anyway, that's just a very personal thing. I don't do that now, but I'm searching for what the next thing is. So if anybody can find something for me, I'd be very, very happy. Thank you.
What was your name? I didn't catch that in the beginning.
Oh, Sarah.
Okay. Yeah, I love what you said about the freedom of running. And that is what this whole thing, I think, gives us, is a little bit more freedom. And yeah, it's hard. I mean, it sounds in a way like you sort of are grieving the loss of running, but then looking for something else that provides some of the same qualities of that running did. And the way you described the running, there was so much flow. Like, you were totally in your element. You were in your zone. You were in your flow. You were connected with the deepest part of yourself, to the point that you could just close your eyes and trust, you know, count on that you were moving in the right direction. And I love that image. And in a way, that's the image for the whole session, right? Is like, how can we do this? I mean, I even struggled with that when Zoom wasn't working in the beginning today. I mean, just to sort of be vulnerable with this myself, it's like, okay, well, how do I just count on myself? How do I count on everything I have done to this point? How do I count on the fact that somehow I will connect with you guys, even though you can't see me, even though I feel like I'm doing this with my eyes closed, because it's sort of how this feels. And at the same time, like, you're with me, you know, you're connecting, we're speaking with each other. Like, it's possible. And there really is, like, freedom in trusting yourself that, like, you have it all within you, and you don't need all these external things to make it happen, in a sense. And that's where academia really trips us up, is there's so many externals, there's so many, you know, gatekeepers, and there's so many different deadlines and committees and markers and things like that. And so creating spaces where we feel that freedom is, it's really essential. I love
I've also
talked about that freedom.
I've come to the conclusion that whatever we do will never be enough. So we just have to do the best we can.
Oh, that's it. That's exactly right. Right. I mean, and that's, you know, in a way, the good thing about that is it's like, you know, life is just, in a sense, it's like, it's endlessly interesting. There's so many more things we could possibly do than, you know, than we can do. And there are lots and lots of projects, you know, over the past few years, I found myself, you know, I've gotten invited to do a lot of things that I would love to do, but that I have to say no to, you know, writing projects, other kinds of things. And they would be interesting, and I might be good at them, but it's also very liberating to say, you know what, I love that you've asked me. I would love to do it. It sounds like it could be really fruitful, but I have this commitment to this other project that I've been working on, and I need to honor that for myself. You know, I just actually did that this week with someone who invited me to be part of a volume that it's their passion project, but it's not really mine. You know, it's, there are so many times where it seems like, well, maybe we should do that because, and I've been so conditioned in academia to do that. Like, well, oh, that would help me get tenure, you know, years ago, or, oh, that would help me get this, or it would help me do that. And now I will say, I think there's some freedom in just being able to say, well, no, you know, that's not where I want my limited energy in this lifetime to go. You know, I want it to go here instead. So, you know, there's like many, many things we can be good at in the world, but that doesn't mean we need to do all of them. So that's, you know, another piece of it for sure. How are we doing with time? We're at 11:13. We need to end by 11:30, right?
That's right, if we can, right? In that neighborhood.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, so these are just such great comments. My gosh, this is like, it's really amazing to hear from so many of you. It's really generous. I guess, let's see. I want to read to you a poem, actually, which I think might be a good segue, which really, what I love about this poem is, I guess, one of the things that has helped me really to access this greater depth or to create more boundaries is to, I've sort of lived my life, my whole life. I live this, I try to really live out a mantra of cultivate spaciousness. I mean, that to me is how that actually informs everything I do. It informs how I live in my home. It informs how I teach. It informs the writing I do. And it also informs the decisions I make. And if I find myself trying to make a decision of, should I say yes to this, whatever it is, or should I say no to this? It's like, I come back to, will it give me space? Or in Sarah's language, will it give me freedom? You know, and if it won't give me space, and if it is going to make me feel more boxed in, I'm going to say no. And if it, you know, if I can say no, I will say no. And I found myself saying no much more than I ever did. You know, in my 20s and my 30s, I was saying yes to way too much, and which is kind of how I had to stop and pause and reflect and get quiet to do some of this stuff. So we're, you know, I guess one thing I want to encourage you to do on your own, because we don't really have the ability to do it here as easily right now. But I want to encourage everybody, when you're by yourself, like later today, tomorrow, whenever, if you're thinking about this, write out a list for yourself of like all of your shoulds, all of the things you feel you should do. I mean, it might be that you should call your mother, you should write a sympathy card to someone, you should attend this event, you should call that person, you should do this writing project, you should clean out your garage, whatever it might be, all the shoulds. I mean, just like a dump of all of the shoulds you need to do. And then take a few moments, maybe using some of the prompts I was giving you in the meditation, and draw for yourself an image of what that list looks like, what that should list looks like to you. I know for me, the image I always come up with is that of what I would call a pencil person. It's that if you were a kid in the 80s, like I was, a teenager in the 80s, I loved those pencils that they had like colorful, crazy, soft hair where the eraser would be. And if you would take the pencil and roll it and rub it really, really fast in your palms, the friction made the hair stick out everywhere. And that is like, you know, that's the worry, the friction, the kind of constant perpetual motion, the shoulds for me. It's just like my mind's like on fire. And it's also a feeling of being pretty scattered and crazy, but also feeling very stuck. And then, you know, whatever the image is for you, it could be anything. And then what I'd encourage you to do on your own is to make a list of the coulds of, you know, like Sarah's example of, I need to find something beyond running. Well, I could find this instead, or I could, whatever it might be. Maybe in the piece that John was saying that somebody articulated, maybe it's that we stop thinking about this as a calling and remember it's a job, you know, and that we don't have to give our life over to an institution. And, you know, maybe it's that, maybe it's, who knows, whatever it might be. But the could list is all the things you could do. I could take a long bath tonight. I could go for a long walk. I could sit and make a fire. I could read, whatever it might be. It's usually very different than your should list, which feels very obligatory. And then take a few moments with that list and think about, like, meditate on what image comes to mind when you look at that could list. It probably will do what I was saying a little bit earlier, which is it might cultivate greater spaciousness. It might give you a sense of openness, more than of feeling like trapped by this tyranny of shoulds. And draw yourself that image and look at the difference between those and how they make you feel. And how do you get more of your, how do you get more could going in your life? I mean, most of the time we check off the should list pretty well, or it feels overwhelming. Excuse me, but the could list isn't always well attended to. So that's something to, you know, sort of do on your own. That might also help you define for you how to align your decisions with your values so that your decision making is really rooted in, this is what I value. So for me, it's like, I really value time to write the writing I want to do. And that means I have to say no to certain things that come my way that would be totally exciting and fun to do, but I can't do everything. Or another really good example, a very practical example of, at my university, we were trying to get a mentoring program off the ground, a faculty mentoring program for more senior faculty to partner with junior faculty and help people, you know, along. And the committee that was organizing this decided it would be a good idea somehow to get together on, it was a Saturday or a Sunday, to gather potential mentors and mentees to, you know, to sort of basically see who's interested and match people up and get it going. And I replied that you know, because I totally believe in mentoring, that I love the idea, and that I would love to be a mentor to someone. And I would even want to mentor myself, that's a lifelong thing. It's helpful forever, regardless of how senior you might be. And at the same time that I was saying an absolute no to doing this on the weekend. Well, it turns out the mentoring program didn't get off, it didn't get off the ground. And I don't really know exactly why, but I will say that that's where I drew the line. It was like, no, you know, maybe years ago I might have just done it because, well, I felt I should. But now I realize, well, no, I can say both. I can say, yes, I'm really interested. Yes, that's something I would put some energy and creativity into. But no, I really value my time with my partner. I don't get to see him very often. We're in a living apart together relationship. He's 2 hours away. The only time to see him is on the weekends. And no, the school doesn't get me on a 6th or 7th day. And like, I've given enough, and this is where I can draw the boundary. And that's sort of an example of how I feel very called to mentoring. It's very much a part of everything I believe in and do. And yet the parameters for it were such that that was just not negotiable to me. And also I said in my message, the important part of the story, I think, is that I said in my message, if we're going to impart a lesson to people we're mentoring, it's that we should cultivate more work-life balance. So this immediately sends the wrong message to schedule this on the weekend. And, you know, it's such a, to me, it's such a great example, though, of how the calling to something can really, it can also be kind of made wrong, I think, by certain institutional efforts. And so we really need to, I guess, be mindful of that sometimes. So with that, I do want to share with you this poem that I discovered some years ago in a book called Teaching with Fire, Poetry That Sustains the Courage to Teach. And it's an extension and kind of deepening of Parker Palmer's work on the courage to teach. If you're not familiar with Parker Palmer, I definitely recommend getting his book, The Courage to Teach. It's excellent, and it helps us to understand that the methods of teaching are far less important than the relationships that we cultivate with our students and with ourselves to be good teachers. So I think it's very helpful, and I will say that that philosophy helped me. I know your next session is on online pedagogy, but a year ago when I was thinking about how to sort of shift gears and put my classes online, I was really drawn to this idea of let go of the methods, let go of all the sort of mechanical stuff of it, and just, you know, really kind of practice this sort of art of letting go of some of that. And it made my teaching this year very successful, I'll say. So, so that's just something that I think Parker Palmer is really inspiring. So this poem comes out of this collection, and the poem is called Fire. It's by a woman named Judy Brown. What makes a fire burn is space between the logs, a breathing space. Too much of a good thing, too many logs packed in too tight can douse the flames, almost as surely as a pail of water would. So building fires requires attention to the spaces in between as much as to the wood. When we are able to build open spaces in the same way we have learned to pile on the logs, then we can come to see how it is fuel and the absence of the fuel together that make fire possible. We only need to lay a log lightly from time to time. A fire grows simply because the space is there with openings in which the flame that knows just how it wants to burn can find its way. I love that poem. It really, it always speaks to me, just that reminder to cultivate spaciousness, to not keep piling it on and on and on, which is, you know, it's so hard to do. And I know, like, that's where I'm really drawn to what Valerie said in the beginning of just this feeling of so much coming at her, so much guilt, so many accommodation requests, constantly feeling behind. But if we sort of think about it as all of those logs, all of those, you know, just constant piling on, that's, you know, we'll just burn out. So the only way to really have that sort of creative fire going is to, you know, try to let go of some of that guilt so that we can find some of that space and some of that freedom. In our last few moments together, I'm wondering if there are any, you know, burning questions or comments, anything you want to add or ask me. I'm happy to do that with you.
It's Ed Bell here. I just had a quick comment for Sarah. Sarah, like you, I'm a runner, and I've had periods of my life in which I simply could not run, and it's a very, very difficult thing. But I just thought I would mention that in case you haven't thought of this already, one way to get that mindfulness and the exercise and the breathing and the physiology would be to use an elliptical machine. So just throwing that out there in case you hadn't thought of it before.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Ed. I do appreciate that. I'll try anything. I've done the walking, and that really helps, but it's not the same as running when I see people running by me. But thank you.
Yeah, there's no substitute for running. I agree.
You sound like my partner. He's a crazy runner, yeah, and I'm a walker, and yeah, he says it's not the same. It's just no, but I don't know. I'll never know.
But it is possible to find something else. As Ed says, I used to be a swimmer, and that was my first concussion. I got hit by a bicycle, so I did learn. You know, I watched all these crazy runners, and I thought, well, I can't do that. But in fact, I found it very, very well. There is a freeing element to it, and it's partly just because you're not thinking of anything in particular. So I know I will find something. Thank you, Ed. I appreciate that.
You seem like you'd all be really fun colleagues. Like you're just really, there's a lot of compassion in the group. That's the other thing is that, you know, as a community, you can really help each other. I mean, even when I'm not facilitating something like this, like you can help each other to say no. You can help each other to find nourishing activities rather than asking like, how's your teaching going, or how's your class, or how, you know, to ask someone, you know, like, have you done anything fun for yourself? Like what, you know, did you find, you know, for someone to ask you, like, have you found a new activity that you really care about and that you feel good about? You know, something that takes it away from all the shoulds and the not good enough and all that stuff.
And I think, just really quickly, and I think that's one of the things that for many of us have made the last year especially challenging is that we have had a very strong sense of community and sort of a very, very good relations with each other and lots of, you know, just helpful, spontaneous conversations and chats in the hall and so on. And with everything being done remotely now for many, many months, it's, I think, made, you know, that's presented an additional challenge.
Yeah, right. Everybody's sort of like so close but so far away. Yeah, there's but at least in some way you have an anchor back to like the sense of there's some camaraderie or support or something. Because I think when we like our time to be able to do this, it's made easier when we have people in our lives, both people like friends as well as colleagues, who can really just, you know, keep reminding us of these sorts of messages of, you know, of caring for ourselves. And then when we do that, we usually care better for other people. It serves everybody better. So let me just, in closing, I'm going to just ask you to, again, close your eyes if you feel comfortable, and just sort of try to assimilate maybe some of what we've talked about. There's lots, you know, certainly running through my own mind, lots of interesting words around calling, around freedom, vulnerability, being strong for other people, but trying to remember to retain some strength for ourselves. So just, you know, let's see what kind of comes in and what just sort of leaves as you take a couple breaths in and out. And as our time comes to a close together, I want to invite you to just visualize it could be any word again, like, and maybe you can come back to the word that you came with in the beginning, which is that sort of like, the quality of presence that you're hoping for, sort of like some sort of quality that you want to cultivate. Maybe it's, like I said before, maybe it was balance, maybe it's joy, maybe it's play, maybe it's stillness, solitude. I don't know what it might be for you, but try to focus on that word again. And what that feels like to you in your body. Maybe you can think of an image that goes with it, could be eating watermelon and spitting out the seeds with someone you love. It could be building a snowman. It could be a run, whatever it might be for you that sort of, kind of goes together with that word. And then just sort of as a final way of thinking about this, think about these two sentences that I'm going to give to you where you'll take that word and put it in the blank. I'd love to blank. Maybe I'd love to play. I'd love to balance. I'd love to be still. I'd love to be free. I'd love to be strong for myself, whatever it might be. Kind of just breathe that in, that that's what you're going to do. And lastly, use that word to fill in this sentence. I am blank. I am free. I am play. I am balanced, or I am playful. I am balanced. I am joy. And then hopefully you can try to keep reminding yourself of this throughout the day and throughout your time, even with the other speakers. I'd love to blank. I am blank. And to use that as a way to guide you for also future decisions, boundary making, things like that. And then in this way, you're installing this word, this intention, this practice. You're installing it as a resource in you to guide you and to encourage that sort of boundary, even in the face of this being work you love or an institution you feel committed to, other people you feel bound to. And then when it's comfortable for you, you might just open your eyes. And I wish for each of you a chance to really claim that quality of presence, that quality of mind that might serve you and the people that you're close to and love, and even people who are difficult for you. Having that quality really serve you and others best. I'm just going to conclude with this very short poem by Julia Fehrenbacher called The Cure for It All. She says, go gently today. Don't hurry or think about the next thing. Walk with the quiet trees. Can you believe how brave they are? How kind? Model your life after theirs. Blow kisses at yourself in the mirror. especially when you think you've messed up. Forgive yourself for not meeting your unreasonable expectations. You are human, not God. Don't be so arrogant. Praise fresh air, clean water, good dogs. Spin something from joy. Open a window, even if it's cold outside. Sit. Close your eyes. Breathe. Allow the river of it all to pulse through eyelashes, fingertips, and bare toes. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe until you feel your bigness, until the sun rises in your veins. Breathe until you stop needing anything to be different. So I thank you all for your time and your energy and your compassion towards the limitations of this. I hope that despite that, you found the time with me useful. And I hope it gives you some joy as you go about your day and your week. Feel absolutely free to be in touch. I would love to hear from you. And if you want to reach out to Mike for that information, he will pass along my website, my email, my phone number. You can contact me any way you like. It's just been an absolute pleasure to get to be with you guys.
Well, thank you, Deb. That was wonderful, and what a great way to close off this segment. It was really, really wonderful. So thank you, and yeah, and I will pass along all of your contact information. So
terrific. One day I'd like to actually see you in the flesh.
That's right. Someday.
Oh my God! Yeah.
I am like Snuffleupagus on Sesame Street, very much so. Only you can see me. Or the reverse.
That's hilarious.
The reverse of.
Oh, I love him. That's so funny. Oh, that's great. That's really great. So yeah. So thank you all. I really, really appreciate the opportunity, and I hope it's useful.
All right. So
thank you.
All right. Thanks.
So we're going to.
Thank you very much.
Okay.